Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. This is Ben Thompson, and this week we are going to do something pretty fun. Pat and I were able to go visit our friends at Ridiculous History, and we recorded 2 episodes with them covering badass stories from the American Revolution. We'll play the first one for you today, and the next one will be on Thursday, and then next week we'll be back with regular episodes. Please stay tuned. I think you're really going to like this one, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.
Ridiculous History is a production of iHeartRadio. Welcome back to the show, fellow ridiculous historians. Thank you, as always, so much for tuning in. That's our super producer, Mr. Max Chesapeake Cape Williams, which will make sense later.
Will it?
It will. It will. It'll make. We're gonna do it.
Will it make sense as it pertains to Max's personality as a human?
Ooh, that remains to be seen. That's Mr. Noel Brown. They call me.
I'm trusting you, second chair, Ben.
They call me Ben Bowlin here for tax purposes. We won't look into that. Guys, this is very exciting. This week is huge for us because we are joined with a mythological, phenomenal duo, the co-host of Badass of the Week. So let us welcome none other than Dr. Pat Larish and the returning guest, Ben Thompson.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us back on. We are excited to be here and tell some fun, badass stories from history.
Max, I got to take issue if you're referring to Ben as second chair Ben. That is unacceptable.
But we have 2 Bens.
But Ben is first chair of his Bendom. You know, they can each be, we can have co-first chairs where they're co-chairs.
I'm Ben 3. I'm Ben 3 in my wife's phone. Because she numbered them in the order that she met them.
Isn't that fun?
Ben 1 was a coworker. Ben 2 was her volleyball partner. I'm Ben 3. I was like, we're married. You got to change it. Just Ben.
No, you don't.
No number.
You don't. I disagree. I think historical naming conventions in contacts is delightful. I think it should always stay the same. Never change a thing.
Are you sure it's a 3 and not like a phonetic representation of some sort of guttural sound or something?
Oh, coming in hot, Pat. We love it because we were also talking off air. First off, huge fans of Badass of the Week. We were talking off air a little bit about your earlier work on the one of the most prominent authors in all of the English canon, James Joyce, and we kind of warned you about our earlier episode regarding his quite explicit love letters.
Warned / enticed. We'll see how that shakes out. Yeah, I think I described that as our only NSFW episode, to which I was told that's not quite the case, but it's definitely our most NSFW episode. This being a family show, we had to what's the word? Trigger warning the hell out of that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we trigger warning the heck out of that. Our beep button was working overtime. Accounting did right back. We
get charged.
I had no idea James Joyce was so filthy.
Dude,
I gotta go listen to this.
You were being so sarcastic.
He was into butt stuff. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it at that.
He's got some poetic language about farts. So so Pat and Ben, before you all listen to that episode and completely lose all academic respect for us, what
about James Joyce?
We want
to. I know, yeah, James Joyce. He's serious. He's a classic.
No, I just mean you should lose some academic respect for him as well once you read these letters. We didn't write the letters. We just discussed them at length.
No, I mean, the thing about being an academic is that you study what is there.
You do. It's not up to you.
Oh, Pat, we don't have time for it, but gosh, we want to know your opinions about Finnegan's Wake in a future conversation. For now, we are launching into 2 different tales this week, which are entirely about people who are badasses. So, ridiculous historians, as you're tuning in, please do check out our friend's show, Badass of the Week. There's something that was new, I think, to Max, Noel, and myself here. A guy named George Rogers Clark. How does this one start, and what makes him a badass?
And also, I just want to point out this is Badass of the Week here on Ridiculous History, and I yield my time.
Badass of the week.
Exactly.
It's like the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of a who's on third kind of situation. But yes, please do tell. Let's get right into it. When I read George Rogers Clark captures 5 future U.S. states, I think of like the Dave Clark 5. Like this is like describing some sort of jazz band. That is not the case.
He's doing some jazz with some jazz with
some
his
military
jazz.
And improvisation of warfare.
Got it.
Yes, exactly. We are doing some of that. So yes, it is Badass of the Week here, and we're going to talk about some cool stuff. Now we've got America 250 this year. So at Badass, we've been doing a lot of stuff for U.S. history, American Revolution, that sort of thing. And I was trying to think of an interesting angle to bring to you guys. And one thing that I think doesn't come up as much as it should is that America 250 doesn't happen without France being involved. So we're going to have kind of a French flavor to these next 2 episodes.
I love
a little herbes de Provence, perhaps.
That's right. Yes. So that is the plan. And we're going to talk about some French involvement in the American Revolution in some ways that don't normally get recognized, I feel like, but that are cool and badass and should be talked about. So I guess it's Bastille Day now. By the time we're recording this, we're both having like collective national sadness, probably more them than us over the World Cup stuff. But it's relevant, I guess.
Too soon, Ben.
Were they ever really in the running, though, guys? Are the French really known for their football skills? I don't know. I'm asking.
Yes.
Yeah,
they are. Okay,
yeah, no,
they won it 2 World Cups ago, and they were runner-up. They won before. So,
had no idea. Good to know. Clearly, I'm not a sportsman.
They were like the number 1 team in the world before the loss. It was a pretty big upset.
I'm poo-pooing nothing. I'm just asking. I just didn't know. When I think of the French, I guess I don't think of football skills.
And just because it bears mentioning, we as much as we are going to say like the French legitimately have a lot of involvement in America gaining its independence, we're going to make a bunch of jokes about the French too as well.
Go.
So we gotta keep that theme going.
Low hanging fruit.
Yes. It's the whole thing. And one interesting aspect here is, despite a lot of the stereotypes about French culture in the United States, which are kind of inherited from World War II, at least, despite those stereotypes and those, kind of fun ripping at your buddies things that we have in this culture, you raise an excellent point, Ben, that America reaching 250 years, as he said, it wouldn't have happened without French intervention. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I don't think that's even up for debate. So even before they became involved on an open military perspective, they were sending weapons and money and equipment and uniforms. All the rifles that we were using were made in France, legally and illegally. There were guys who were like smuggling weapons out of France to help us fight the English. You've got Lafayette. You've got a lot of French influence even before they joined the war officially. And then when France and Spain joined the war, things get really wild, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next part of this, in the next episode. So for today, we're going to be kind of in the continental U.S., current continental U.S. I do have my co-host on with me, Dr. Pat Larish. And
bonjour.
Yes.
Ouais, d'accord.
And one thing that will come up occasionally as well is as much respect as I have for the French and their ability to help us win the American Revolution, my pronunciation of French words is absolutely unacceptable.
I would argue you should lean into it. Just really make a meal of it.
Right there with you, Ben, because wait, Pat, do you speak French?
Un peu.
Ah, okay.
Yes, yes. So anytime there's a French word in our podcast, I usually just stop talking and then she just says the word, or we just record her saying it so we can just clip it in there. So it just goes over top of me.
In earlier days of this podcast, we had a producer named Casey Pegram, who we still love so well, who we always described as a Francophile and a Francophone. And he was our entry point into the world of French pronunciations.
Mm-hmm.
And
Still
we could
is.
tell.
The R.
We could
You just can't
tell.
make the R. I was the vice president of my
there'd
French club in high school, and I cannot make that R sound. I can't do it.
be a
Impossible.
head shake and a lowering of the eyes anytime we say a French word, and then he'd chime in and give us a hand. Yeah.
I'll still text Casey on the case to say, hey, man, how do you pronounce this? And he'll say, you should get someone else to do it.
He's busy. He's a very busy man.
So Ben, take us back here. Okay, so we know that there is a character named George Rogers Clark. We know that there is a huge, diplomatically put, kerfuffle between various forces as the United States becomes an emergent nation.
Ben, can I just say, you pronounced the French word kerfuffle beautifully.
Thank you.
You,
Yes.
you want to roll the R a little more. Kerfuff.
Kerfuffle.
Yeah.
Sorry, I spoke too soon. I should have known.
So this, we obviously know that the horrors of the creation of the United States still reverberate today in various iterations. You talk in some of your earlier work, Ben, about how American culture for quite some time sanitized the story, right, of the European arrivals. So really paint the picture for us here. Take us through the revolution. Tell us a little bit about France's actual involvement. And then, can Pat, can you and Ben introduce us to this George guy?
Yes. So we are going to do that. So we are not just going to kind of we'll deal with some stuff that's a little sticky, but I think, we're going to try to find a good way to approach it. Mostly we're going to tell a badass wilderness survival story, deception, adventure, grizzly bears, diplomacy, Bowie knives, guy that you've never heard of before who captured territory in the American Revolution that ended up being 5 U.S. states, almost without firing a shot.
Fantastic. So, all right. I'm excited.
That's the story we're going to tell.
I'm primed, as is our audience. You kind of describe in the Badass of the Week piece that you sent us about this topic, or maybe this was some of your notes, this notion of that sanitization that Ben Prime. No, that's not fair. That ridiculous history Ben was describing of this sort of kumbaya moment of like, we met the Native Americans, we presented them with marshmallow peeps, and then we all held hands in a ring and sang kumbaya.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated and tricky than that.
No, you're saying it wasn't entirely above board. Are you saying that maybe there was some, okay, let's hear it.
So yeah, let's kind of set the scene of where we are here. So we are talking American Revolution. We're talking 1770s. And when people think revolution, they're picturing Boston, Philadelphia, New York City, this Stamp Act and throwing tea into the harbor. But the colonies extend out to the Appalachian Mountains. So you have this whole western section out here. Kentucky is there, right? Virginia extends out to the Appalachians. You have people living on the frontier here, and they've got problems that are not associated with the harboring and quartering of soldiers or whatever. They're dealing with grizzly bears. They're dealing with starvation, cold. They're living in the mountains. They're being attacked by tribes from the native nations. There is some crazy stuff happening out here, and it's a very hard place to live. Now, George Rogers Clark enters into this area. He's born 1752 outside Charlottesville, Virginia, but he ends up moving out to the west, which at this point is the Appalachian Mountains, is kind of the border. He is a land surveyor, which sounds like a pretty chill job. We picture the guys with the yellow tripods and the high vis vests standing at the middle of the road with some orange cones.
Like a tiny telescope or something, right?
Yeah.
They're looking through. Okay.
My dad worked as an assistant to a land surveyor some summers when my sister and I were growing up. And
those guys are very chill, by the way. I don't know what your experience was, Pat, but usually they're kind of a cool head.
Yeah. Sounds fair.
Diplomatically put.
I have not had the pleasure, but I am fascinated by their vests and their gear. And I'm always kind of wondering, what are they doing? Is it like in the modern version of land surveying? I guess it's about property boundaries and property lines.
But in
the past,
zoning,
it would have been literally like, identifying tracts of land that could then be, sold.
Way more
stolen.
hardcore
Yes.
in the past, because there's a note that you said here, Ben, that we cannot lose, which was, you said our guy George Rogers Clark is out in the West, and everybody needs to keep in mind that at this point in history, this is pre-Lewis and Clark, right? We haven't had any official comprehensive exploration by the Europeans over to the Pacific.
We don't know what's out there, right? You're mapping uncharted mountains. You're being attacked by wild animals, mountain lions, bears, wolves. You're fording rivers that you don't know where they go. You're making homemade rafts. You're sleeping in the trees to stay dry. It's 1770s, right? You're carrying heavy ass equipment over mountains and across rivers. You're camping out. You don't have like Gore-Tex. You don't have like a nice tent. And you're dragging this heavy gear. You're charting uncharted land. You don't know what's there. You're trying to track out stuff for, maybe people could settle here. Maybe we can move in here. Maybe we can. Turns out people already live there and don't want you to live there. Don't want you to take their land. That's a problem for you if you're land surveying at this time period. It's physically exhausting. It's dangerous. And it requires you to kind of be a navigator, a survivalist, or cartographer. It's math and survival at the same time.
So just to clarify, at the end of the day, these efforts would have been to map these areas. Like, who is he working for, and what would this data have been intended for? Like, is he just laying out like what's available, kind of like getting a literal lay of the land? I'm curious.
Yeah, he's kind of making maps for Virginia. He's hired by Virginia, the state of Virginia, or the colony of Virginia at this time. And it's like potential settlements, potential. We still know what's out there, right? It's here there be monsters, and we've got to figure out what's there. And it's Star Trek Enterprise, right?
Right.
Exploring new worlds.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To boldly go where no European has gone before. And so he's got all these skills and he's using them. And this is his background. This is why he succeeds later. He doesn't need a map. He made the maps. Clark understands the geography of the frontier better than any random British soldier or bureaucrat sitting behind a desk in Detroit.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like you can't really understand the land from a map alone. Like, I'm horrible with directions, and a map is honestly the only thing in mapping on my phone to get me places. But when I like ride my bike and actually like I'm in the streets, it just commits more to my mind, and I can actually kind of understand the geography a little better when I've actually experienced it actively, as opposed to just like as a passive, map follower.
And I love the Detroit shout out, by the way. That's
Detroit is going to feature prominently. Detroit is where the bad guys are.
Okay, so also to level set here, how old is our man George?
So when the war begins, he's 25. He's got this curly red hair. He's a big, strong Virginia dude, farm boy kind of thing. He goes through, when he's in his early 20s, he goes through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky to stake his claim on some lands there. He starts building a life for himself, kind of frontier, picture like the log cabin kind of lifestyle, right?
Okay.
Old school. The American Revolution kicks off, and now, things are even more destabilized. He was already in the middle of nowhere. Now he's in the middle of nowhere and in a war. And this kind of comes home to him because, speaking of Detroit is a major British fort at this time. And there is a guy in charge, when the war begins, the guy in charge of Detroit is a dude named Henry Hamilton. He's the lieutenant governor of the area. Hamilton is kind of your classic British. He would be the classic bad guy in the movie here. You can picture him right already with I don't even have to say anything else about him. You can picture what this guy looks like.
A lot of people are picturing the redcoats from the film The Patriot, right?
Exactly.
Who are just cartoonishly bad for some reason.
Yes. And these guys are cartoonishly bad, Pat, right?
Picturing him wound a little tight.
Yes. Yeah. So picture a cartoonishly villainous British redcoat officer. And then also, he's got this right-hand man who is a chief justice named Philippe de Jean. And
Nice. Nailing the French.
That's a great name, by the way.
so we've got the, for
Could there be a more stereotypical French name than Philippe Dijon?
Philippe
Just have to put that out
Okay,
there.
okay, yeah.
It's a mustard I would order.
Fair enough.
So there, we call them the dynamic duo of tyranny, if we want to continue the cartoon theme.
Oh, boy,
and
do we.
Hamilton, he was the mastermind, and Dijon was the guy who was able to manipulate the law to work in their favor. He was a gallows judge. Sidebar, he once sentenced a local woman named Anne Wiley to death for the horrendous crime of petty theft.
Oh, boy. Sounds like a real grandstanding type fellow using
just wait.
the law
Yes.
to his benefit. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's get there.
So he sentenced her and her accomplice to death by hanging, but he couldn't find a hangman. So Justice Dijon offered to spare Anne Wiley's life if she would act as the executioner for her accomplice. She agreed. And
Thrifty.
Now, keep in mind, she is a petty thief, not a career, professionally trained executioner.
Executioner.
Yeah.
Thanks, person.
Yes.
So she did a horrible job. She did a horrible job.
Really
she did
botched it real good.
She totally
There's
botched
an art
it.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the crowd was absolutely horrified, and she thought, well, at least I got through that. But once she was done with that, the judge had her hanged anyway.
Oh my God. Can we also just point out that, what is the alternative to the crowd watching an execution being horrified? Like, when it goes off without a hitch, we're like,
and
no,
they busted it all up. No, you're doing it all wrong.
We're clutching our pearls now.
Yeah.
Well, also, I don't think they sold tickets.
Also fair.
At this case. So, but how just absolutely malevolent is that? How Colonel Kurtz is that to say, we'll give you a chance to live if you kill someone who's probably your friend in addition to being your accomplice. And now, whoopsie, rug pull, or I guess, drop the trap door on you.
Ooh, yeah.
But who executed her? The hang person just kind of popped up all of a sudden?
That's a good question.
I don't know. But listeners may be pleased to know that later on, and this is well after the events of our main story today, later he was actually indicted by his own superiors in Montreal for illegal acts. But before that happened, he and Hamilton ran Detroit like their own little fiefdom.
Okay.
I do love to hear that the comeuppance is coming.
Sort of a proto-Tammany
It will sort of come. It's history, so it's never as clean as it is in the movies. But
right.
But yes, so you've got Dijon and you've got Hamilton. And Hamilton has a nickname when the war begins. They call him Hair Buyer Hamilton. Because when the war begins, he doesn't have a lot of soldiers. He's got maybe 500-600 guys, British soldiers with him. He's managing 5 states worth of territory, basically the entire Midwest. He's operating out of Detroit here. And so he sends out a call that says, any warrior that brings me a scalp, I'll pay you money for it. No questions asked, right? So any scalp, which is
that opens things up to a lot of not that the normal version of that is good, but I guess he could just be taking scalps from anybody on the battlefield.
Anybody you want, just bring me some hair and I'll give you money for it.
Yeah. And Hamilton, Hair Buyer Hamilton, on the one hand, he's actually, as we know, a talented amateur sketch artist who has drawn some nice, realistic-looking, respectful sketches of a lot of the leaders of the local Native American nations, the local Shawnee, Miami, and Wyandot leaders. Some of these are still preserved at Harvard today. On the one hand, we've got that. And on the other hand, while Hamilton is drawing these nice portraits for his sketchbook, he's also taking their very real existential struggle against colonial expansionism as a cheap proxy weapon. And Hamilton I imagine him sitting safely behind strong wooden walls, sipping his tea, offering cash and supplies to tribes to fight a war that he didn't want to risk his own regular British troops on. So the Shawnee, the Miami, the Delaware are sovereign nations. They're fighting a desperate war to keep aggressive American settlers off of their ancestral lands. And, life is complicated, history's complicated. So even while this is going on, and even while Hair Buyer Hamilton is buying hair, as we're calling it, we do know that some of the tribal elders were actually speaking against the practice of selling scalps to Hamilton because they thought it was, on many levels, a bad idea, including politically. It was actually probably not a good plan, in addition to other considerations. But even with a shared distrust of the Americans, Hamilton is, when you get down to it, he's a wealthy imperial bureaucrat who's exploiting their desperation for the purposes of the British crown.
Now, that's fascinating because when I'm picturing people buying scalps, I'm picturing them paying for Native American scalps, from troops. Like that's sort of the version of that I'm used to hearing about. So this is the opposite. He's paying Native Americans for scalps.
To scalp American settlers, yeah.
Settlers. Got it. Diabolical.
And add to that the interscene or intercommunity violence between some indigenous groups.
Oh, no question. And just that influence and that monetary component potentially throwing their civilization or their society and rules
It's
into
a really
disarray.
interesting thing to keep in mind. And it's going to come up a lot once we start getting into the French involvement here, because these are not, a lot of times when you read about this in history, it gets kind of lumped in as like the British allies, right?
The monolithic
but you have
thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the Native American tribes. But you're looking at several tribes here, right? We've got the Shawnee, we've got the Miami, the Wyandot, we've got the Delaware. These are different tribes that are their own political units. And they're trying to figure out, what do I need to do? Who do I need to side with to not lose my lands to the colonial invaders? But also, I don't want, these guys have complex relationships with each other, right? I don't want, if the Delaware is going to take this guy up on all this money, suddenly they're going to become way more powerful because they're going to get all this money, right? And so how do we negotiate this thing, right? So there's a whole Game of Thrones thing happening here that is much more complicated than just like the British allies were attacking settlers. And it's worth mentioning when we talk about this stuff. So for Clark, he's living in Kentucky with his friends. They're being raided. Things go nuts once the war starts. And there are a lot more attacks than normal. His already difficult life is getting more difficult. So he goes to the governor of Virginia, Patrick Henry, who was his boss as the surveyor. And he says, look, I want to go get this hair buyer guy. I want to go take care of him. And Patrick Henry says, yeah, go for it, man. Have fun.
That's also, by the way, fellow ridiculous historians, Ben just gave us a verbatim quote in Patrick Henry's actual accent.
Yes.
So,
good luck. Go win the war. Can you give me some men or some gear, some money? No, I don't have any of that.
Oh,
But
no, he just co-signed it and didn't help
just said,
at all?
yeah, go for it. Just give him a
Thoughts and
piece of paper
prayers.
that says, good luck. Please go win the war.
We believe in
wow.
you. Yes.
Yeah, right. We believe in you. So we know that he was a voice of relative authority, right?
Yeah.
In his stomping grounds. So he was able to gather some resources of his own or some people.
Yes. So he's basically an unpaid intern tasked with conquering a continent. And he goes out to his buddies in his neighborhood and he's like, hey, like neighborhood watch guys, like I'm going to raise a militia. I need some people. He gets 150 guys.
That's a lot of
Remember,
guys.
Hair Buyer is in a fort with trained British soldiers and cannons and 500 guys. Clark's like, all right, I got these 150 guys. So in June 1778, he just kind of walks into Illinois country, crosses the Ohio River into a big forest. And these guys go on their mission. They're bringing clothes from home and rifles that they use to like hunt animals and stuff. Like they're leaving their families and stuff behind. These are just dudes that live in the woods, right? They have a Bowie knife and a rifle and whatever ammo they can get their hands on. And
a dream.
And a dream.
Yes.
Song in their
Yes.
heart, potentially.
So they head out, they hunt for their dinner, they sleep under the stars, they survive the elements, and they go out towards their first target is a town called Kaskaskia in Illinois country.
Yeah. And Kaskaskia, it was, in a sense, the crown jewel of Illinois country. It was a thriving French town. It was heavily fortified. And if Clark and his 150 guys had been walking into a standard British fort, they would have been toast. But instead, they find themselves in this weird liminal space. Technically, it's British-controlled territory, but in practice, it's a French-speaking Catholic enclave.
Right. So after the French and Indian War, right, the 7 Years' War ends, the Treaty of Paris in 1763, all of this stuff, we think like Louisiana Purchase and stuff, but everything west of the Appalachians was French. And then, the British and the French have the French and Indian War and the 7 Years' War. And part of that treaty, the French have to cede all those territories between the Appalachians and the Mississippi River to England. So you have these French settlers who were, some of them born in France and have been French, for generations. They live in this little area, and suddenly the French flags come down and the British flags go up. The British don't have the troops and they're not flooding this area with people. They just run up a new flag and put a couple hundred soldiers in town to take over the forts. So they're kind of trying to leverage these trade networks. They're these guys have to pay their taxes to the British now. But at the end of the day, these are Frenchmen. And they don't like the British. You have hundreds of Frenchmen here who were at war with the British like 15 years ago. Like in their lifetimes, they fought the British in a war.
Yeah.
And culturally, it's a very different place. So we're not talking about like Philadelphia here. We're not talking about London. We've got French culture, Jesuit missions, fur trading posts, independent-minded frontiersmen, a lot of mutually beneficial trade relationships, even some intermarriages. The French have been building up their network with the Native American nations over maybe a century even.
Is this in the era of like kind of getting the fur trade going and the trapper?
So that's like the main difference here is that when the British and later the Americans are coming through, they are trying to take this land and settle it, right? They want to settle this land for people and develop it. And the tribes that are living here, the Shawnee, the Miami, the Piankashaw, they don't want people to move in there and build houses. But the French have been in there and they don't really care as much about that. They're interested in the fur trade, right? They're making a lot of money off this fur trade. They're working together with the tribes.
Agreeable situation, right? There's a mutual, that makes sense.
Everybody's benefiting from this. It's a healthy trade. The French fur traders are living with these tribes, right? They're not setting up their own little communities. They're integrating in a way that we haven't seen. And so there is a lot of opportunity here for George Rogers Clark to find some force multipliers for his 150 guys, because he's now in this area that the tribes that live here don't love the idea of, they don't really love the idea of the Americans coming in here and doing this either, but they also don't love the idea of the British doing what they've been doing, which is more exploitative and less collaborative.
Yeah, and he's like, hey, don't worry, I'm America. We're like diet British. So we're right. Fewer calories, I guess. But as you all point out, Ben and Pat, he also had the advantage, our buddy George, he had the advantage of not going in with some crazy hardline ideology for the people. Like, he was not a missionary. He was not religiously extremist, at least in the way he talked about stuff. He instead just sort of told people, do what you're doing, go about your day-to-day life. Also, just me, George, being honest here, I kind of think the British are a bunch of pills. Do you want to help me fight them?
Right, exactly. And the French, to be fair, the French don't love the Americans either, because they're worried. The French are Catholic and the Americans are Protestant, and they're worried about this when we come in there, right? So but so are the British. And that's been a war that's been going on we know we don't like the British. You guys, let's wait and see. And so when Clark shows up, he's like, hey, we're doing this new thing. We're going to be our own country. We're trying to figure out our own stuff. He shows up with these 150 guys. By the time they get here, like Kaskaskia is not close to Kentucky. They've been hiking. Their boots are falling apart. They look like wild men. They look like mountain men when they show up, huge beards and stuff. And Kaskaskia has a British fort. And he shows up and he kind of like lines up outside the fort. He's like, I think if I can win this town over and this region over, we can force these guys out of the fort without having to actually fight them. Because I don't have, my men are too tired and I don't have the guns or the experience or the training or any of the things I need to storm this fort. But if I could take this town, that would be like a big step.
And it's a big risk, too, because if even one of the Kaskaskian inhabitants decides to alert the British at the fort, whoops, there goes the plan.
Right. If there's 150 just like mostly unarmed guys out here trying to like overthrow the government, that's a problem. So Clark needs help. And that is where we meet a guy named, I guess, Pat, I'm just going to hand it off to you without setting you up with the guy's name.
Père Pierre Gibault.
Fabulous.
Yes, Father Gibault.
Not quite as good
or Gibault, as I like to call him.
Not quite as good as Pierre Dijon, but still equally flourishy in French.
That's,
you'd buy a bottle of Merlot from him.
There you go.
There we go. Is Père his actual, like his Christian first name, or is it his title?
It's his title. It's like father or padre. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a Jesuit priest.
Yeah, he's a Jesuit priest, and as is sometimes the case in these smallish frontier towns, he's got a lot of roles. He's also, in effect, the mayor, the judge, the information broker of Illinois country. He's like the guy everyone goes to and kind of expects. He's the grown-up in the room.
Okay.
So he serves the parishes in both Kaskaskia and Vincennes. He knows all the families. He knows their secrets, and also he hates the British. He does not like the British occupation. He sees the British as an occupying force that doesn't really understand the French Catholic culture of the region. And in addition, Père Gibault sees the British paying for scalps, and he's absolutely appalled by that. So he wants stability. He also maybe wants that whole buying scalp thing to end. And he sees that the Americans say, yeah, okay, they're Protestant, but they're Protestants who are more likely to actually respect the way of life that we have here than the British are.
Right.
Okay,
He's
so they're
the guy.
Protestants, but they're not imperious about their beliefs, right? They're not like, well, that's
kind of wait and see on this, right? And so that's kind of why the French are kind of hanging out here. They're British citizens at this point. They don't really think of themselves as such. They think of themselves as French. They think of themselves as French Catholics. And so they know what they're going to get with the British. And when Clark shows up, he does a very wise thing. And he's like, who's the guy I need to talk to? Okay, Gibault. Okay, let's get him. And so they have dinner together. And he's like, look, man, like, I'm not going to change. Nothing's going to change here. Like, I'm here to get this guy out of here. I'm here to get the British out. And if that sounds good to you, let's work together. And Clark is persuasive enough in this meeting that Gibault is like all in. And Gibault starts going around Kaskaskia and he's like, hey guys, like, let's help these guys out. Let's make sure that they're not going to raise arms against them. They're not going to like join the army or anything, but they're going to like, there's a lot of things that the civilian population of this town can do that will destabilize British rule here. And they start doing that.
Yeah. And this is not just in Kaskaskia. Father Gibault rides all the way to Vincennes, which was hundreds of miles away in Indiana, and he does the same thing with his parishioners there. He basically neutralizes the entire territory through winning over hearts and minds. It's this huge diplomatic whisper campaign.
Yeah. And then Clark goes one step further than that. He and Gibault together, they're like, well, we need to get the support of the local tribes as well. And so he goes and meets with the chief of the Piankashaw tribe, a guy whose name is Tobacco's Son, which is makes things complicated when you're reading about it, but his name is Tobacco's Son. Okay. And he's called the Grand Door to the Wabash, which means he's like, it's the Wabash is the river system there. And he's kind of the guy who he's the diplomatic person you need to talk to for the tribes in this region, in the Piakasha nation.
He's their version of the French priest, right?
Yes, so he's their chief, I think. So exactly. He's an important person to get to know. Clark sits him down and has dinner with him, and they're talking about, what they're going to do and what the American civilization is going to look like when it shows up. And he's able to convert Tobacco's son to his cause as well. So this ends up being a big win for him, to where at some point, it becomes clear to the British in Kaskaskia that they don't have a lot of guys at the fort here. And it becomes clear that the town is against them. And the Piakasha and the French are bringing food and guns and ammo and supplies and information to Clark and his guys. And so the fort in Kaskaskia, those guys leave. They leave the town to Clark without him having to fire a shot. They leave in the night and they go to Vincennes, which is the next biggest town. So you've got Kaskaskia, you've got Vincennes, and you've got Detroit. These are the three main settlements for our story here. Clark ends up in Kaskaskia in February 1779. Winter is here. It's a brutal Midwestern winter. He's got 172 guys. He's actually been able to recruit a few from the locals. And the British troops at Kaskaskia have gone to Vincennes. Now, while Clark is holed up here in Kaskaskia waiting out the winter, he gets news that Hairbuyer Hamilton is not just sitting around, he's on the move. So Hamilton has taken 500 guys from Detroit and marched them down to Vincennes as well. So now we got trouble. They're coming for me. My thing worked. I've got this town, but I actually do have to fight this guy, and he's got 5 times the number of people I do, and gun and cannons and weapons and food and all the things that I don't have. Okay. So he's looking at his guys and he's like, what are we going to do here? It's the dead of winter. He's like, we got to go. I think we got to go now. We've got to go to Vincennes now, because the longer they sit there, the more they're going to fortify it. So we've got to go. And he's got 172 just regular dudes. These are not trained soldiers. And he's like, we have to march 180 miles to Vincennes in the dead of winter to ambush these guys when they're not expecting it.
Just imagine the pitch. Hey guys, you know how we all like hiking, right?
Sitting by a nice campfire indoors. I think we got to go out there. The door opens, the whipping wind. But
it's a great point too, as well, given the brutality of the season and given the importance of not letting these British forces really entrench themselves, right? Because it's one of those things where if you don't solve the problem as soon as you can, the problem will only exacerbate over time, right?
Yes. And so we've got to do it. But if you've ever been to Chicago in February, it's
people are so thrilled there when the summer hits. It's like, it's a new lease on life.
Yeah.
Brutal.
So this hike, when we say hike, we usually picture, maybe you're having fun, maybe you're not, but we usually picture hiking on dry land. So this, however, this territory is known as the Drowned Lands, and the Illinois river systems have flooded over. So the entire march, they have to deal with freezing shoulder-deep ice water.
The Drowned Lands should be a region on the Elden Ring map. Just putting that out there, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
It's like that, right? It's survival horror. 17 days, these guys hike 180 miles, which is like, I don't know, Seattle to Portland. It's yeah, this is a long hike.
That's also a great pace.
Yeah, 17 days.
Yeah.
Through the water, right? Through the mud and the water and the snow. At one point, the water gets so deep. They have this drummer boy with them, this kid, and he has to ride on his snare drum like a life raft because he can't. It's water's too deep. It's over his head.
Before we chuckle at this, can you it's such a vivid image and it's adorable. Can you tell us he survived?
I cannot confirm that, but he probably did. Otherwise, I feel like
yeah.
Not hardly boy. Spoiler alert. Very few members of most of Clark's group is going to make it back. There is not He's so I will say yes.
I
I
will
will say
also-
yes with a certain degree of confidence.
I will give him the benefit of the doubt. There definitely wasn't room for Jack on the snare drum, okay? As opposed to
Ba-rum-ba-bum-bum.
the large floating door in the Titanic universe. Just putting it out there.
Yep.
So
They're
this is a miserable thing.
Not
This is
yes. They're getting sick. They're hallucinating. It's so cold. Guys are hallucinating. At night, they have to sleep in trees because the mud freezes. And if you sleep on the ground, even with like pads and stuff, like the mud will freeze your stuff to the ground.
How do you sleep in a tree? I mean, wild turkeys sleep in trees, but do you have to build a little shelf for
Wild
yourself?
turkeys are also mutants and abominations.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
putting that out there.
Yeah, Pat, no offense. I know both you and Ben are in the Boston area, but we're fairly anti-turkey on this show.
They'll come at you, man. They'll come at you.
They'll go at you. They're mad at us.
Oh, yeah. I am neither pro nor anti wild turkey. I just accept them as a force of nature.
Don't they?
Well said.
Don't they roam Harvard campus?
Oh yeah, totally.
They
Yeah.
really do. I saw them in the wild, literally, and I was like, "Is this acceptable?
It is.
Who greenlit these turkeys?"
The turkeys act like they own the place because actually they kind of do.
They're a gang. I remember
Oh, yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in Boston, and no offense, you all, but it can be an opinionated, somewhat divisive place. And the one thing that I see all Bostonians agree on is that wild turkeys are kind of a gang.
Yes. Do not mess with wild turkeys.
And so,
Yes.
despite the fact that these guys are not actively in life or death battles with wild turkeys, they are running into a lot of dangerous wildlife. The environment is inhospitable, sleeping in trees. If you've ever done it before, folks, just a regular tree, not a fancy tree house, not a chiropractor, but your back's going to hurt. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, you got to tie yourself in so you don't fall out when you're sleeping, or you got to build a little stand there. And yeah, I mean, 17 days these guys do this. They have by the time they arrive, and Clark, it bears mentioning that Clark is not wearing an officer's uniform here and carrying a sword and sleeping in a tent. Like, he's walking at the front of the line, right? He's just walking with these guys. He's 25. Guys are all about his age. They're not trained soldiers. They don't really know what they're doing. They got no food. Their clothes are falling apart. They don't have the cold weather gear they need for this to not be absolutely miserable. By the time they get there, they lose 2 guys on the hike. And by the time they get there, they're basically skeletal. They have eaten the last of their food. They're out of food entirely. They're so tired they can barely hold their rifles. And then they get there and they get to Vincennes, which nobody has ever been to before. And they take one look at it, and it's like an uphill approach into a wooden fort with cannons and guard positions and portholes to stick your gun out. There's 500 redcoats sitting there by their campfires inside, eating food and they have ammo for their rifles and for their cannons. Okay, what do we do here?
Tie ourselves to a tree and hope there aren't any turkeys around? I don't know.
Well, that's always a good move, but yeah.
Yeah. So Clark sends a letter. He sends a messenger into the town of Vincennes. And Vincennes is, it's a frontier town, but it's French, right? And he sends messengers into the town, and he says, "I'm going to take the town tomorrow. If you're with us, stay in the town. Don't leave your houses. If you're with the British, go to the fort now, so that we know who's on our side and who's not."
And this could be a huge gamble because, again, you just need one person to tip off the British. But he knows that the French settlers in Vincennes trust the word of Father Gibault. They don't run to the fort. They stay inside. And not only do they stay inside, they also sneak food and ammo and supplies to Clark and his men.
Yes. So the people of the town, word, they don't rat on him. They bring stuff out to him. And then eventually Hamilton does find out. Hamilton's there. He's in Vincennes. He's there and he gets word that's okay, there's something weird going on here. These guys are moving around. And then he starts asking people and they're like, yeah, somebody says it, right? And he's like, oh shoot, there's an American army out there and they're going to take the town. Did he say they're going to take the fort tomorrow? Is that right? then like he starts hearing the drums, that drummer boy, he starts hearing the drums, he starts seeing guys, he starts seeing flags, and so they start marching around. So we're in the forest, right? There's a clearing between the forest wall and the fort where like a little area so you could shoot people when they're trying to attack the fort. But he starts walking around that tree line in a circle over and over and over again with his dudes, waving little banners, changing the little banners around. He's got snipers up in the trees. Like these guys are marksmen, right? They're hunters. He's got guys up in the trees shooting rounds into he's trying to tell them to shoot it through the portholes of the fort. Not necessarily to like kill a guy standing on the other side, but just to like freak them out that like we can shoot through we can shoot through this target here, and don't stick your head out the window because we might shoot you.
So this is like a psyop.
It's a psyop. Yeah,
absolutely.
He's got 172 guys with frostbite, and he's shooting basically every bullet he has as like a warning shot to scare these guys. You just ping around off the cannon so that they know we could hit the cannon if we wanted to. They can't see where the Americans are shooting from. They can't see how many of them there are. They're hearing word that like the town is against them. They're hearing word that there was this big force in Kaskaskia that was on the move here. They're hearing word that the Native American tribes in the area have joined up. They're hearing word that the French have joined up. Suddenly that 500 guys in the wooden fort with 11-foot walls and cannons doesn't seem quite so stable. This is, like you said, it's a psyop. He's tricking these guys. Hamilton panics and he's like, I've got to meet their commander. This is like the old days, right? We just did this. This is like a very American Revolution thing where he's like, I would like to meet I shall meet your commanding officer.
Need a little FaceTime. Yes.
Yeah. I know we've had our differences, but let's grab dinner.
Yeah,
just catch
they
up.
do. They go to a church in town and they meet.
Oh, well, that's fun because the church being sort of a neutral location where you're not supposed to do acts of violence, right?
Right. And so he meets Clark, and Hamilton, I imagine, with the powdered wig and the red coat and everything, Clark is just a mess, right? This guy's like, he's wearing a buckskin shirt that's like covered in mud from a 180-mile hike. He just looks like a wild man. He looks like, I don't know, something out of a movie from the 70s, And Hamilton's like, all right, I'm Lieutenant Governor of Detroit. We can talk. Let's talk like gentlemen. He's expecting a very Revolutionary War parlay here. And Clark is like, look, man, if you don't surrender right now, I'm going to storm the place. And once I storm the place, my men are just wild men. They're all insane maniacs with Bowie knives. I can't promise I can control them once we get into the walls of the city.
That's classic diplomacy too, because people in those parlays, people always or typically will assume that kind of moral stance where they'll go, look, I'm the guy you can talk to. Okay. Mm-hmm. You and me, man, we're just hanging at the church. We can reason this through, but my boys, those folks, man, you thought you bought hair?
Yeah, that's it. Good cop, bad cop, right? He's got his three craziest looking dudes standing around him, just being like frothing at the mouth. It's like, look, I mean, I don't know about Big Jim here. He doesn't really do what I tell him to.
No. That's amazing.
Does it work?
It works. Yeah, Hamilton surrenders. Hamilton signs a surrender that night, surrenders the fort. And as a last moment of like, he doesn't raise, there's a very, which I'm sure he thought was like a big diss, but like the morning he's supposed to hand the fort over, he doesn't raise the flag that morning because he doesn't want to run it down so that they can run up the American flag. You would normally run a flag up at morning roll call or whatever. But he doesn't run it up because he doesn't want the disgrace of running it down. And so that was kind of his, I don't know. I feel like that probably carried a lot more weight in 1778 than it does now. It just kind of seems silly. Yeah. But it's mentioned in multiple places when you read about this. So I feel like it bears mentioning here. But anyway, he surrenders and then he's got to hand his guys over. He hands his weapons over, and Pat, he's got to surrender the fort.
It's a womp womp moment, a kick in the teeth moment. Hamilton looks at the massive army that beat him. And now
he's got to march those 500 guys out of that fort.
Yeah.
500 unarmed men marching out through 150 guys that look like they haven't slept in a month or carrying like weapons that would be a joke, right?
That's crazy because there was at least of the 150 American dudes, there was at least one who didn't have any kind of firearm, just had a big stick and was like, haha.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like surrendering Guantanamo to guys with like bolt action rifles, right? It's just like, you're like, what the hell? And so it's, the hair buyer is taken prisoner. He's put in a cell, and he hates it. He writes so much. You were talking about the Joyce letters. He writes so much like poetic, like complaining about how he has to sit there with the quote felons and malefactors. They don't put him in a special cell for like the gentlemen. They put him in just a regular cell. There's a toilet bucket in there. He calls it a kind of throne that is truly mephitic, which means foul smelling.
Oh, these are great words. I'm writing all of these down.
Have you no separate prison for an officer?
Right. I wish I could do the accent. It would be so funny if I could.
I mean, just like, what, he thought he was going to be pooping in first class?
No, he is not. He is pooping in a wilderness prison cell.
Oh, jeez.
Economy class
the
bucket.
ignominy.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
And so basically without firing a shot, the British lose some guys to those snipers, but mostly that was a psyop. But they do take out a couple of his guys. So Hamilton loses a few guys to gunfire, and Clark loses a couple guys to the extreme temperatures. But at the end of the day, Clark writes home to Patrick Henry, who kind of gave him a pat on the back and sent him off. He says, "Great things have been effected by a few men well conducted."
Huzzah.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well said.
And
yes.
I imagine Clark got a promotion from this, right? Maybe.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, he gets promoted. He gets militarily promoted.
Yeah.
I'm just hearing the
Well,
yeah. I mean,
okay.
to put it in perspective, this guy with 150 men and no funding from the government, using entirely diplomacy and psychological warfare, he captures because the British have now surrendered, and they surrendered to Detroit because this is the extent of their forces. Hamilton has the extent of their forces in the region. So when the war ends, Britain has to sign all this stuff over because possession's 9/10 of the law, and the colonials have it. The region that George Rogers Clark has just captured through this operation will become the states of Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana.
Can you imagine how many pages in your atlas that would take up? You know? That is a not small portion of land.
Yes.
And to do all this, Clark was, he got a pat on the back from Patrick Henry, but he did not get any support from the Virginia government for expenses. So Clark was paying out of pocket to feed his men and get supplies, and he went into a lot of debt for this, and his creditors, they just kept going after him and hounding him. So, yeah. So in exchange for, securing the future of the Midwest, he just gets a stack of bills, and honestly, he really can't dig himself out of it. And poor guy dies in poverty.
Yeah. Becomes an alcoholic. He dies in poverty. Just, really tragic end to this guy. The later years are like pretty rough for him. And
that's just unjust.
He's penniless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's the kicker. Hamilton gets out of prison after the war. He gets paroled. He gets promoted. He becomes the governor of Bermuda and Dominica. So
how do you get a promotion after that?
I don't know, but he lives out the rest of his days sitting on a beach in the Dominican, sipping rum cocktails
and
complaining about the toilets.
About what went down earlier. And just saying, hey, you guys have to understand, the forest was pretty dense. We thought there were a lot more of them than there were.
Yeah, I don't know. Dijon ends up getting arrested and running away. So at least he gets what's coming to him. He gets indicted and spends most of his life on the run. Clark is interesting because, he struggles later in life. But one interesting way to kind of end this story is when Napoleon sells in 1801, when Napoleon does Louisiana Purchase, and Thomas Jefferson sends the Lewis and Clark expedition out to explore the new territories that have been discovered. That Clark is George Rogers Clark's little brother. So William Clark is the younger brother of George Rogers Clark. So it's kind of like a relay race where George Rogers Clark expands west, and then his brother William picks it up and goes on the Lewis and Clark expedition all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So I think that's kind of a fun way to wrap that, or to tie that off.
George walked so William could run, or George trudged
There we
through
go.
mud
Row.
so William could trudge through
Row
more
his
mud
canoe.
probably. And, yeah.
There we go. And we had an episode not too long ago, Noel, Max, and I, about how scientists were able to track the passage of the Lewis and Clark expedition through their poop. Sorry to make this so poop centric, guys, but but that's part of it. I think we can all unanimously agree the award for badass does rightly go to George Rogers Clark, and I'm so mad to hear that old Hamilton just got to spend time on the beach.
She's the governor of Bermuda. Yep.
During a very difficult time for Bermuda, by the way. I think it was probably still kind of a chump during his governorship.
It's possible. It's possible. He just becomes a colonial administrator, which doesn't sound like a terrible life.
Right.
That's what they call a cushy government job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so. And we are going to wrap this exploration here. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much, Pat, for joining us. I don't know. I think it's fair to say neither of us knew about George Rogers Clark.
Absolutely not. I mean, for the longest time, I was like, where's the Lewis and Clark connection? These seem related. These seem adjacent. And we got there. So
yes, finally we got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge expansion of the American colonies. It became 5 states, and we couldn't have done it without this one guy and the aid of the French people who lived in the region and the Piankashaw nations and the other nations that helped out in the process. So this is kind of the French connection. Next time we're going to talk about a little bit more of a direct action that the French took, which is also badass, but in a very different way.
And congratulations, by the way, to all of us, including you, Max, for not making references to the musical Hamilton. I didn't know if we would get through it, but guys, we did it. We did it as a crew. We did it as a team. Where can people go to learn more about you all's work?
Well, we are at Badass of the Week basically everywhere. Anywhere you find podcasts, you can search for Badass and you'll see my face. Haha. Just kidding.
You can also check out the Wikipedia disambiguation page for Ben Thompson, which is one of my favorite parts of your bio. Pat, we can't wait to hear what you think of our notorious James Joyce episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we're going to live stream our listening to it on our Twitch. We're going to create a Twitch,
oh my gosh.
and we'll live stream us listening
that's
to
fine.
it.
You can record it like a
reaction
commentary
video.
track. Yeah, like a riff track.
Riff tracks.
It's worthy of that. It's pretty cringe.
Big thanks to our super producer, Mr. Max Williams. We'll align the credits a little bit for now, but folks, please do tune in very soon when we get to the next Badass of the Week. We've got double badasses.
Badass of the Week. Here on
Badasses of the Weeks.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yes.
Here on Ridiculous History. Thanks y'all so much for joining us again, and we'll see you next time, folks. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.